Hello, everybody, and welcome into episode 7 of the Beacon Breakdown. No Laird again this week. He's busy preparing for our matchup tonight against Manchester. Instead, you got me, Mike Terrific, and I am joined by our League of Legends coach, Chase, here.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing? So to start off, we'll go over the past week of what happened in Valpo Esports since we were here. So our Overwatch teams had a busy Thursday night with both Team Beacon and Team Shield playing 2 games, and they both split those games, going 1-1. So not a bad start for them in the mix. And then on Friday, we had both our Rocket League teams in action, and Team Brown picked up a huge 3-0 win over Mount Union. Gold Team did suffer 2 defeats on Friday, but they were missing their captain, Daniel Murphy. So, hoping to bounce back next week and get the season going on a little bit of a better foot. Then we also had League of Legends actions on Saturday. Pretty good win for you guys to pick up. How do you think that game went?
I think it went really well. I mean, it was it Anderson was who we were playing against. That was one of the bigger teams we were fighting for to try and keep on track to secure at least third place in the seeding. So winning against them 2-1 was really good.
And then you also had a win this past Wednesday in
Yep.
NECC action. How do you think
Yeah.
that one went?
That one also went well. I know we 2-0'd. I can't remember what team we played against now though. I
It was Carthage, I
Oh
believe.
yeah, it was
Yes,
Carthage. Yes,
yes.
yeah. That one was a little bit more dominant than the Anderson one. The Anderson series was a little bit more back and forth. Um, but at least with with the exception of the our Purdue Fort Wayne series, it seems like we've been having a little bit easier time in NACC lately than we have been in Gleck. Just some competitive opponents the last couple weeks in Gleck.
And you can also catch League of Legends later tonight,
Mm.
actually, in your game against Trine.
Yep.
Um, and then our last team to cover is Smash Bros. A very exciting Saturday for them as well. They picked up a win over Mount Union, and it was a reverse sweep, big comeback win. Chris taking 7 stocks, really good performance from them. Their second game of the day, unfortunately, they came up just short on the last stock against Bethel.
Mm.
Big rivalry there, so we're hoping that we see Bethel again in the playoffs and we're able to change the result that time.
Yeah.
And then one last note on our iRacing team, they will be in action tonight actually, and tomorrow as well, I believe. So you can catch the action on the tracks there. So now to get into it, we've got Chase here.
Mhm.
So everyone wants to know about League of Legends. So I guess take me back to the very beginning.
Okay.
How do you get into esports, I guess?
How would I get into esports in general?
Yes.
So esports in general, so the first time that I had ever watched anything esports related was all the way back when I was in middle school, which I turned 30 this year, so that was a while ago. And that was I had a friend of mine when I was in middle school who I played Halo with all the time, and then he was like, "Oh man, did you know that there are people that play like Halo professionally?" And I was like, "That's like a real thing?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he put some of the games on, and we were watching them. That's the first time I got introduced into esports. That was a long time ago now, but
And then your esport of choice, League of Legends,
yeah,
has also been around a long time.
it
How
has
did you
been.
find how did you find that?
It has been. When I so being an alumni of the university is actually when I was a student here. A friend of mine introduced me to League of Legends, and then kind of at the same time, both introduced me to the game and the esport. So, really, my entire time playing League of Legends, I've also been watching League of Legends competitively, and so, I mean, it's season 12. I think it's the 11th season competitively. So, it's been a long time.
So you've been playing for all 12 of those seasons then?
No, I started season 2.
Okay.
So just when it got out of like alpha slash beta because the first season was in when they were in their like alpha slash beta, and then season two was like their first open, like their first full launch, I guess I should say, because it was kind of like an open alpha beta. Anyone could just sign an account and make it, but that's
Hmm.
when they're like, oh, we fully launched. Yeah,
So
was
I
when I
guess
started playing.
how cool was it, at the beginning? Like, describe to me that feeling that kind of like encaptured you into this game. It's first coming out and like, you've seen other esports, you've seen Halo, you've seen this kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah,
sure you played other games, but then League comes out and what's that like falling in love at the
yeah,
beginning?
and well, League of Legends in general is just such a different game than what I was like into at the time. Because mostly at the time I played games like Halo and Call of Duty. I mostly played shooters.
Hmm.
And Halo is just, or Halo, and Call, oh my gosh, and
No,
League of
you're good.
Legends was just anything, losing the name of the game, I guess. League of Legends was just like so different from any other game I'd played. I played Will of the Ancients, the Warcraft 2
Okay.
mod that both Dota and League of Legends are based off of. So I played that back when I was in high school, and specifically I played a mod that was like Naruto characters versus Bleach characters in it, and I'd play that with my friends, and I'd be like, oh man, this is just like that game.
Hmm.
And it really getting like so that's like originally was like, oh, when my friend was showing it to me, I was like, oh, it's like that game that I played in Warcraft 3. I was like, that's pretty cool. So I started playing it, and then I saw Twisted Fate was Gambit, and I was like, basically, and I was like, oh man, that's really awesome. I was like, I want the Gambit character, so I had to grind to unlock the Gambit character. But really, what I think's kept me playing the game for so long is just being a fan of the esport itself. Has really kept me engaged in League of Legends more than anything else. Because I mean, I don't know if I would have continued playing the game for 10 years if I just had the game itself. But I really think watching the esport uh, continually, right? Between I watch the LPL, the LCK, the LEC, and the LCS, which is the Korean, Chinese, European, and North American competitive scenes, and just watching that continual content that literally airs every single day of the week has just really kept me engaged with the game more than anything else.
So then talk to me about, how you get here, head coach of League of Legends, what was your first I guess thought of, hey, I heard about this, maybe I want to join this and be involved in this.
So as far as like working and like part of like staff or working alongside esports in general is something that I had been interested in a long time, was kind of breaking through that and being able to like breaking through that barrier because not easy to get a job in the esports space.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
it was something I was interested in a while, and I had been looking at it for a really long time. But what drew me to wanting to help out with Valpo was the fact that it was Valpo's esports team. Um, and when I had a friend who of mine who had sent me an article that was like, "Hey, the university is starting a League of Legends team," and then I was like, "Man, that's really cool." And then I saw that Tristan was the one who was running it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna send him an email." I never met him before at the time, and I was like, "I'm just gonna send him an email, and I'm gonna see if he needs like extra help or volunteer or anything." And that's what started everything. Was yeah, just because I just thought it would be cool to like get the opportunity to kind of help out. I didn't expect to be taking the full helm of League of Legends, which not complaining about it at all because I really have enjoyed doing it over these last 4 years. But yeah,
So then what is it like, when you first get here, first year of the program? I know, we've had Coach Bryce on from Overwatch. He talked
mhm,
a little bit about, that first year, a little bit unorganized, a little bit, you're just putting things together, figuring things out. But
yeah.
what was it like for you on the League of Legends side?
Um, I mean, it was very. So a lot of it was is like for me at the beginning was, I mean, yeah, of course there's the lack of structure there, but it's also pure ground level, right? And when I say lack of structure, I mean lack of structure as far as like inside the team. You know what I mean? Like as far as like being like, oh, what's like a scrim look like? What's prep look like? You know what I mean? What's all those things do? And from myself, having been a fan for so long and having watched like so many, read so many articles and watched so many interviews where people talk about it. And that was the easiest thing for me at the start was being like, well, I know there's all these things that the teams do, and it's like, and we don't do. So it was just from the start, it was like, oh, we got to try and build that basis. And that's what I've been trying to do over the last 4 years is trying to make our team and structure, at least on the League of Legends side, um, mirror what the experience somewhat looks like um, for an actual professional League of Legends player or someone who plays in the amateur scene.
And then, with you building that structure, I guess, you said you came in first just to help out, but was it kind of natural to take everything over?
Yeah, and I was pretty like I felt like I was kind of dominant and taking over from the start, like not intentionally, but I kind of got that feeling that I was doing that. That wasn't originally my intention coming in, but it was more so me being like from the very start, being like, man, there's all these things that we just aren't doing that we just need to do, and it was me more of being like pushing and like having a very strong like opinion and mindset and being like when we started, we had a 10-man roster that was split into two teams, and I was like, well, why are we cutting our team in half? Like it's one team we need to be together. You know what I mean? And be one 10-man team. They can still participate, they can still compete separately, but they need to be like one unified team. And then it was like being like, oh, well, it's like we're just kind of showing up and playing scrims, but we need to be able to prep for the scrims and talk about draft and like lay out our draft and structure it ahead of time and do different things like that. So it was like stuff like that at the very beginning that was like the base things that I just like started off that I saw like immediately being like, oh, these are things that we shouldn't be doing. And it was me having like a very strong opinion of us of us doing it that way.
So I guess to go a little further on those strong opinions, can you talk a little bit about, what your coaching style is, as the head coach,
Yeah. So I would say that as far as uh as far as like League of Legends coach is concerned, I'm a very player driven coach. While I do have my own strong opinions about the game. I mean, I've been playing it for so long that it's hard to not have strong opinions about the game and where the meta goes and things like that. Is I am also not a kind of coach of like where some professional coaches are, and there's really two kind of main splits in it of where like the professional coaches too, where there's more like player driven ones that kind of let the players decide and kind of try and guide the players, and then there's the side that's like you pick what I tell you to pick. It's like this is the composition, you try win with it. You know what I mean? And they just kind of have their players, they kind of be like, you have the fingers to execute it, right? And I'm more on the player-driven side, where I kind of get their feedback is on like who would they want to play in the matchup, right? Like if the enemy top laner picks Darius, I might be like, I think this is the best Darius counter. But if Jacob or Anaya are two top laners, right, um, feel more comfortable with a different champion, I'd rather have them play the champion that they feel more comfortable on than playing the champion that I think is going to do the best. And I'm also, if I'm not sure about a matchup, especially in a scrim setting, yeah, I mean, even in a competitive setting at some time, I'm also very willing to like let the player fail. You know what I mean? Like if they think it's better, I'm also willing to let them have that kind of like teaching moment of being like, oh, that didn't work, or it's like, hey, it didn't go the way you thought it did. It's like, what could you have done better? Do you think a different champion would have worked better? And not being like, I told you you shouldn't have picked that. Me being like, all right, cool, and just letting them go for it. Um, I mean, obviously, there's been times where I've been like, I don't know about it, but more often than not, it's me being like, "Are you 100% sure?" And then like, "Yep," and it's like, "Cool," and
Hmm.
just locking it for them and
So
doing it going into the draft.
yeah, so then behind the scenes, what does a typical week look like in terms of, what kinds of things are you doing to prep? How much are you practicing and scrimming, and what goes into leading up to a game?
Yeah. So our week is 4 days, as far as like the actual our actual like week between games and practices. We have our practice on Monday nights, which is tonight, but we have a game tonight. We have a game that's scheduled during our practice time tonight, but normally Mondays would be a practice, and that's our LCS practice. And the purpose of an LCS practice is to do about as close to a mirror of what the current LCS landscape looks like as we can. LCS landscape is like they play a best of three scrim, or they play a three blocker best of three scrim, one or the other, and then they do a long review between every game. Rather than that, we do the scrim and then we do a long review of the games afterwards, is what our normal LCS practice would look like. Then on Wednesday, we have is our NACC night where we compete in NACC, which is the National Esports Collegiate Conference. Then on Thursday is our short practice, which is our remote one, because Mondays is normally really long. It goes from like 5 until 10. It's a 5-hour practice. It's a very long practice. So I give them a short night then. Wednesday is our short night. Wednesday is a night that we focus on like drills and like focus on different rotations, practice diving, things like that. And it also gives us a time to discuss the meta and be like, especially when a new patch comes out, I normally give it a week. And then after that week, I'm like, so over the last week of playing like scrims and everything, like what do you guys think has gone up in priority? What do you think's gone down? And it gives us time to discuss that. And then on Saturdays is when we compete in GLAC, the Great Lakes Esports Conference.
And then, in both conferences so far this semester, your performance has looked, much improved from last year. I guess what do
Yeah,
you credit this step
yeah,
up,
because
this
we're
good year you're having so
because
far?
we're 12-2 with a 23-6 game score. It's
You
pretty.
know, you got it.
Yeah, we're really playing pretty amazingly. I so I would put a lot of the credit for that success on the players themselves. I feel like one of the things we struggled with the most last year was flexibility and just being like open to the adapting to the meta. And I think that the year of playing in competitive and the year of experience has really kind of helped kind of the players grow more and become more all-around players. And so I think that's been a big improvement. I mean, they've done a lot of them were grinding really hard over the summer, working really hard to get better individually, and I think it really shows. Um, Aside from that, too, it's like also having more drill time set in. Uh, Also, COVID last year had its own issues, so that being much looser is helpful as well. But a lot of it is, I'd say, more than anything, I would put most of the success on the players. Um, yeah.
And then, the roster also looks a little bit different this year. I know you have, the same good core
Mhm.
coming back with Nolan and Jacob and
Yep.
Edgar and Karras and Josh, right?
Mhm.
But then you also got a ton of new players, and a little more flexibility, especially with like Anaya to be able to
Mhm.
flex out certain roles. So how has that, new influx of players helped the team?
So whenever new players come in, it can always yeah, it always comes with good and bad and
Hmm.
challenges. Yeah, so the new players coming in can be really great because especially when you have two people playing the same position, what I really try and do is so there's a story that happened. It's been a few years now, but it was an old version of the Afrika Freaks that are now named the Kwangdong Freaks. They don't even have that name anymore. But the back when they were the Afrika Freaks, they had an atmosphere where they had a 15-player roster, and the three players that held each position on the roster, rather than competing for the slot, they would work together, and they would talk about. A player told a story. It was a North American player visiting their facility in Korea, told them told a story about how he saw three players who were all junglers sitting at a computer talking about a champion's best jungle path and like debating it with each other. And he said he had never been on a team where people did that. He said normally people are like closed, like hiding their information and like trying to one up one another because they all want to be the starter, right? And it's kind of like that combative. So that atmosphere that the Afrika Freaks had is really an atmosphere that I have tried to emulate into the series or into the team itself and really had that be like with Jacob being a top laner and then Anaya coming in, it's like rather than it being like Jacob versus Anaya, who's going to play, have Jacob and Anaya try and work together. And when we're like drafting, like Anaya will be like, "Oh, I'm thinking about this one or this one," and then Jacob might be like, "Oh, you might want to do this one because I think this one plays that matchup better." You know what I mean? So it's like they give input and they kind of help each other rather than being like Jacob being like, "I don't care what she plays because if she ends, then it's my turn." You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's not like it's not something like that. It's really like a cooperative atmosphere, and new players can really help with that because they bring in new perspectives. Like I really think that a lot of Nolan's development comes from him having the ability to work with someone like Josh, who has been playing competitively with the team for this is his fourth year now, and I think him having the ability to like work and talk with Josh and get feedback from Josh has really kind of helped his development a lot, and I think that having that kind of cooperative atmosphere is just really helpful for the team. And the more players that come in, just the more opportunities for those different ideas and the ability to have those good conversations.
So looking ahead, I guess, what are your goals for the team and also for you personally?
Um, Personally, so I mean, a goal for me personally with the team, it's the easiest one to start with,
Hmm.
is so since I have been head coach in the team, we've made playoffs almost every single semester, which I've taken over the LCS terminology and just called them splits. But
Yep.
almost every single split we've made playoffs. I think there's only one that we missed a playoffs in at least one of our conferences. And despite having made playoffs so many times, there's never been a time that we've actually taken the trophy. So I would really like to personally close out one of these conferences and actually take the trophy home for Valpo. Um, and as far as goals for the team as a whole, my biggest goal for each of the players is always just their continued growth and development, right? Each each season in league, which runs from like January to November, excuse me, the season's about to end in 2 weeks. I set them the goal of ranking up one rank. It's like if they finish gold, they should don't have to, but their goal is to hit plat by the
Hmm.
end of the next year, right? To keep them moving forward and keep them growing. And that's always my goal for the team is they keep moving and growing, right? I have said before that I would really love the Valpo esports team to be able to compete at that Proving Grounds amateur level, which does take challenger, grandmaster, master players, right? And I told the players a bunch of times, I was like, I don't want us to compete at this level because we went out and we found a bunch of challenger, master, and grandmaster players that can compete at that level for us. But I want us to be able to compete at that level because we took you guys and rose you through the development to get to that level where we can compete that high. And I've talked with the players a lot about helping them grow and improve to that level.
So as we're starting to wrap up and,
Mm.
get towards the end here, I guess one of my final questions is going to be like, what are some of your inspirations in the scene and, in life in general, I guess, too?
Yeah. In the esports scene, my Freak of Freaks, that was a big one. That team. Uh, I also am a big fan of the iteration of G2 that had perks. I think them having from what all the players had said, that roster that had been together forever, uh, that had like Wonder, Yankos, Perks, Mickey, and stuff on it. That team had like such a family dynamic, and I try and mirror that kind of dynamic with the players. So having that cooperative, a Freak of Freaks dynamic combined with that G2 atmosphere and combined with also like EG and 100 Thieves drive to like bring up talent, like what I was saying about making them the master players, not finding a master player. You know what I mean? I mean, I'll take a master player, but
Of course.
I would also much rather see them develop and grow. Um, that those are probably my three biggest inspirations in the scene is Evil Genius's current iteration with probably just Peter Dunn, because Peter Dunn did that same thing with Mad Lions, so it's probably just Peter Dunn.
Hmm.
Perks is G2, and then the Afrika Freaks from I think that was 2016. Afrika Freaks. It was a while ago at this
Yep.
point, but those are probably my three. biggest inspirations as far as the League of Legends scene itself is concerned. Um, Man, in general, is more difficult. Um, yeah, I don't know. In
Okay.
general, the
Yeah.
biggest inspiration in general is difficult. I mean, I used to be a big fan of Grant Cardone, who's a big like positivity attitude person. Um, but it's the only one I could think of off the top of my head.
And then I guess just as we're
Mm,
closing out, what does
mm.
Valpo Esports, mean to you, and what have you seen the program as a whole build over these past 4 years?
The seeing, I think, well, so the program to me means a lot. It's been really a great experience to have the opportunity to work with all the players and to kind of see this program grow from that base level to what it is now. And it's been really an amazing process to be a part of and watch it grow. Um, so yeah, it really means a lot to me. That's why I spend so many hours here and I don't regret any of it. It's amazing. And then you said watching
I guess
you
just
said the
kind of the culture that we've built over the
yeah
past 4 years.
uh yeah it's crazy to see the the blossoming of all of the different teams and everything. And I mean I I it I was just joking with Tristan the other day of how crazy it is to be more of a fly on the wall with the other teams and be
Hmm.
like, oh, if I'm like here early on a Saturday and I watch Smash compete and be like, oh, how the Smash's dynamic works compared to like how the League of Legends dynamic works and like the Overwatch's dynamic from working with Bryce when he was on the League of Legends team compared to him coaching now. And then yeah, and just seeing all of that, seeing all of those like blossom and grow and working with and Christians ask for my advice too with the Overwatch team. So it's like working with all of them and like seeing it all take form and bloom has been just awesome. It's been it's really hard to describe. It's been really
Yeah.
cool. It's been really cool.
100%. Well, it has
Mhm,
also been awesome to, have you on here
mhm.
talking some League of Legends with us. Thank you very much for joining us, and you can see the team in action
Mm,
later tonight at 6 o'clock when they take on Trine.
yeah.
So that's all for us here at the Beacon